Welcome everybody to Mudflood was Armageddon. The Mudflood was Armageddon. Don't let them tell you anything else unless they are willing to debate you in a fair and honest way. So, RJ,
Good morning.
we got quite a bit going on, man. We got 10,000 tons of radioactive waste near the river in Ohio. I'm in a mood. So go ahead, brother. What do we got?
Well, yeah, it isn't like something just happened. It's just stumbling, onto current situations. Yeah, not that anything happened overnight. It's just the
No,
times we're living in.
you'd think it was just another day in paradise. Let's look at
You'd hope. You may hope.
so we got this guy to look at, the invisible government. We all know about that.
That's nothing new either. It's
Oh, is this new, RJ?
Frost returned. It came denouncing anti-Semitism.
I think I got to do this one thing here.
yeah. There you go.
We got this conduct that meets the fair use standards. I'm not giving medical advice because they don't want to hear what I got to say. I don't want to give financial advice because I'm anti-slavery. But anyway, we got this going here. Fair dealing. What is a genocide?
And wearing a star of Peter. It was never going to be we were expecting. It wasn't going to show up in a familiar costume, a bent frost, tiny mustache, explaining all the problems of Jews. It had to look different. If it didn't look different, we never would have let it in the door. And that's still what's throwing a lot of people off. It looks different. It doesn't look like what all the World War II movies and Holocaust novels conditioned us to watch out for. In fact, it looks so different that the victims in the last story have the same religion as the antagonists in the new one. That old aphorism, history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes, is true because people don't tend to make the exact same mistake in the same way twice. But the conditioning which led them to make the first mistake will often lead them to make a similar one. We've all been made far too familiar with the Nazi extermination program, whoever consent to Jews being rounded up and loaded onto trains again. But we also didn't purge from our civilization all the murderousness, hatred, and tyranny which made it possible. That's why this new Holocaust has been allowed to happen. We've all been conditioned to watch out for the next Hitler, but there's never going to be another Hitler. We've been so focused on looking out for the Hitler who never comes that many of us missed when we started singing verses that rhyme with the ones we were hearing in Germany 8 decades ago. People assume what's happening in Gaza can't be an actual genocide because the news media keeps assuring everyone that's not what we're looking at. And so do the politicians. And
So you can kind of get the idea where he's going in the next few minutes. Yeah, I was wondering.
Yeah, what goes around comes around. Yeah.
Yep, I think we're getting an echo on your part, RJ. If you don't mind re-hitting that, I know that is the worst thing to hear when you're on a show. But
No,
sometimes I hear it and sometimes I don't. But I don't want you to have to listen to like the old Yankee broadcasts of the echo. And believe me, I hear people, doing shows and telling people, hey, do you hear an echo? And I don't hear it. So sometimes I wonder if the audience, is hearing it or not. And it really, with RJ and I, it's not as easy as him just clicking a button. His algorithm is messed up like everybody else. In this shadow band, even the man, my brother, who has been doing this with me for years, has the hardest time signing in. It's practically, it's got to be, it's part of the shadow ban, RJ, that it is so hard for you to get onto this show. All you should have normally done is just click off and then click right back on. But it's always a process. And I hear it on other shows too. Do you hear the echo? I don't, So we're in Gaza. We have a religion that we're exposing, that we're being called Gnostics and just crazy to the point of where they would have killed us 400 years ago when Rome was in charge, because they were doing that to people who didn't believe their doctrine. I'm in school. I am in a class, history and culture. We're studying, everybody that ever founded a government, from Cyrus to the people who changed to Confucian. Never has there been, a Constantine that led to colonialism of white nations that left us where we are today. It's still, that's the history of the world in our short season that is the deception. We're supposed to believe that a white person named King Pippin donated all of the land after it was already donated to Constantine 1,000 years earlier. It was redonated. First, Constantine got a donation, and then another guy got a donation, and white power, people don't want to believe it, RJ, but we can show them that, according to the Articles of Confederation in the First Continental Congress in 1974, the United States incorporated. We're still getting that echo is now coming back, and it is so frustrating. Here I am saying United States.
I don't have it on this end.
Proved that it is a corporation. See, it is. I muted your mic. They're doing it again. There is no rational explanation for echoes. There's no rational explanation for us being left to believe that this is a normal situation of the Bible that we're believing, that we've been handed a Bible that teaches Jesus lied to everybody. He didn't know what generation he was coming back in. And now it's going to work out because the Jews are building a third temple. Just ask Flatzoid. That's my life. And I want RJ to be in this, and we've got to echo. RJ, I apologize, but I'm going to have to ask you to restart it again and give it another whirl, because
I'll actually clear out. Yeah.
Okay. And I want him to come back. I don't want RJ just to give up. That's what they want, because he's got some insight on the videos that he sent me. And this is a part of a team where people work together and we're called together. And we know YouTube's doing this, and I hope that he tries again, but it's got to be frustrating. So here that is, we are a corporation. In 1776, our history says, we were the first nation that, said, let's work together to make a profit. The 1774 Articles of Association and Incorporation that establishes the existence of a corporation in the United States and Canada, that happened. That happened. Thanks for not giving up, RJ. We got, I don't hear the echo right off the bat, so that's good. I just laid out once again, the only thing you really missed was the fact that the Articles of Incorporation establishes the existence of a corporation in the United States and Canada. I'm going to just mute your mic, and then I'll mute your mic when I mute my mic when I ask you to talk. So that's not what I wanted to do either. So there it is. Now look, here we go. In the United States, articles of, and it turned back on, articles of the organization, you know, it's it's a limited liability company, you know, it's a limited trust. It's you you settle it for articles of association. Well, that's what we did. That's what we live in. Well, where did it go bad? Because, well, the United States, when it incorporated other corporations that it incorporated, the United States could dissolve them almost overnight because it was the corporation. It Something happened, RJ. Something happened, everyone, and it happened in this law case. It was the Santa Clara County versus the Southern Pacific Railroad in 1886. Slowly and surely, from 1812 through the 1830s with the Spanish American Wars and everything else, that was Mexican American Wars that was going on, other corporations became too big to fail. The United, during the wars, who was going to make the cannons if the established businesses didn't? Who was going to make the uniforms? Who was going to use the new steam powered and the 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 cotton gin, which is short for engine? It was an engine. The Industrial Revolution was coming. Trains were here. And this was happening. The railroad case arose when several railroads refused to follow a California state law because they could. It gave less favorable tax treatment to some assets owned by those corporations. And they sued them and said, hey, government, you're a corporation, we're a corporation. This is the case that equalized corporations. And corporations became a living person. Thus, the Supreme Court's actual decision never hinged on equal protection claims. Nevertheless, the case has been allowed to have clear constitutional consequences, and it has been subsequently cited in affirming the protection of corporations under the 14th Amendment. At the very best, it is an unusual exception to the normal understanding of the workings of the court's rule of stare decisis, the reliance on precedent. It is an instance in which a statement which is neither part of the ruling of the court nor part of the opinion of a majority or dissenting minority of the court, has been cited as precedent in subsequent decisions, meaning plural, of the court, leading to the fact that now corporations are persons. This is the case. This is the case. Let's just highlight it, right click it, search it, and just see what comes up. Is it personhood? I guess they're going to have to. It would have been nice to have that pulled up, but like I said last night, let's try that again. You know, I was going to write the paper, and I did. So, but that's the ruling. That's the ruling. I'll guarantee it, RJ. So I don't hear myself echoing. That might have the problem might have resolved itself.
Yeah, in my mind, it's like a formal acknowledgement for assembly, for nefarious activity. In my mind, that's mumbo jumbo.
You want to read some mumbo jumbo? When Jesus is coming to reign, he is coming with fire and hailstones, not with mud. The mud is from the time of Noah. Well,
There you have it.
Wilhelm, you can believe what you want, but it's not what the Bible teaches, because we're dealing with multiple voidings of the earth. We're dealing with Noah's flood. We're dealing with Armageddon. We're dealing with, after the 1,000 years, there was a reaping of the wheat and the tares, and a reset after, where there's the people in the heaven with the blessed first resurrection. I can't help it if Wilhelm is late to the party and doesn't understand and or want to read the Bible as it was written to those people then, or look at the melted mountains and the catacombs that are already filled with Christian markings, where obviously people ran to the mountains and they melted around them, and they came out being ruled with a rod of iron, surrounded by tares, not knowing it, because everybody was acting Christian and they were ruled with a rod of iron. RJ, they're late to the party. We can't stop and explain it every time. Am I correct?
And then you have the scenario when Satan isn't able to deceive nations, and then until he's been released, and that's his grand finale.
Right. And then there's the whole situation that other people like Wilhelm and others don't like. And I normally, maybe I wouldn't smoke marijuana this early in the morning. It's only 7:22 here, but I will, because I'm the guy that developed this theology. It was given to me. I'm also the guy that was there when they developed the parallel azimuth direction system that turned into the GPS. Even though it's documented in high school, I had one math class. It was Algebra 1. And then after I graduated, 2 years later, 6 years after I had taken that math class, I was going to join the Army because Iran had taken hostages. And so I took a test to join the Army, and they asked me if I wanted to be a surveyor. And I said, sure, sounds good. And they said, well, you have to pass this 6-week course in geometry and trigonometry. And I go, well, I've never taken that. And they said, well, according to this test you took, you should be fine. So I took it and I became a surveyor. The weird things like that all my life, ending up going to Bible college, meeting a wife whose parents were in the John Birch Society, and finding myself in the position of importance in the Christian Reconstruction movement, being a post-millennial preterist for 40 years, athletic director, coach. And here I am saying, no, it's the John Birch Society and the CIA. They did it by covering this up. And there's no turning back. Everybody else can say they've tried to change the world. I feel this theology has. You've been a great help. And I don't need to listen to these other people. I know where this is going. This is a judgment, not a restoration by the MAGA people who are trying to sell silver. Go ahead, RJ. I'm going to read some of the comments.
Yeah, cover up. Yeah, a lot of people are pulling up the covers. Yeah, regardless of who they're in bed with. As far as trying to focus on the truth wherever you may find it, and then connecting the dots and linking it into a chronological line of orderedness. It requires time and effort, and then presenting it to ears that are, willing to look underneath the veil, so to speak. And
I'm waiting right now for my class at 10 o'clock because our group was going to be the next to speak, and we were supposed to be answering the professor's question. Why should we be suspicious of what Elhard wrote about Charlemagne and why Charlemagne can be trusted? And for the first time, it's been super clear to me that at that point, that donation, where the world accepted that the Holy Roman Empire could go forth and spread their religion and then change it to spreading their religion by force and inquisition with certain caveats of you must believe there's a Trinity, you must believe there is a Holy Father in a city far away, or we'll kill you. And proving it by killing people. The Fox's Books of Martyrs, the Albergins, the Valdenese, the Huguenots, all the unnamed Gnostics that were many all living in castles, as we see they have discovered from expanding on the added 1,000 years of history that going back to the Bible, RJ, people like King David, they lived in cities they didn't build. We're still living in them today. That's our movement. Go ahead and add anything you want to, and then we'll look at some of those videos and just ask people, who do you want to believe,
yeah, and it isn't like there isn't any evidence. It's just a matter of recognizing, what you're looking at, and understanding, pretty much everything you've been taught. At best, there may be an element of truth, but for the most part, it's just whole cloth that's just woven BS, with the webs that they weave.
Right.
And then, yeah, you get
But
to certain points.
Let's work through some of these videos.
Makes sense.
Now, anything you want to add about this one? I think
is this the one that he's doing that book review kind of 100-year-old publication? Or,
I'm not sure. Let's check this out.
Imagine a world like that. What did they do? And here's a couple quotes from Bernays later in the book. News reaches the public through the printed word. Books, magazines, letters, posters, circulars, and banners, newspapers. Through pictures, that is photographs and motion pictures. Through the ear, lectures, speeches, and band music. Radio campaign songs. All these must be employed by the political party if it is to succeed. One method of appeal is merely one method of appeal, and in this age wherein 1,000 movements and ideas are competing for public attention, one dare not put all one's eggs into one basket. It is understood that the methods of propaganda can be effective only with the voter who makes up his own mind on the basis of his group prejudices and desires. Now check that out. The voter can make up his own mind on the basis of his group prejudices and desires. And this is what Bernays was a genius at, unfortunately, but somebody was, that he knew that humans are kind of herd animals, and so you're looking for your group prejudices and desires.
Pigeonhole.
They're pigeonholing people. They're planning people. They're everything from the woman's rights to the suffrage to the temperance movement to the abolition of alcohol to the reinstatement of it. And in the meantime, the mafias get rich. This seems like a plan that is working. And in the meantime, we live in an era where, unfortunately, the salt of the earth, MAGA, are kind of like, forget that, this nation was owned by people living in those mudflood buildings that had royalty, that had treaties with France and England, and then they were all broken because they weren't white. And the United States went from its ideal corporation to joining the other white nations in colonialism and white power, constantly increasing to the point of the one drop rule, where blacks couldn't be seen on TV with white people unless they were the taxi driver, unless they were the maid, and that lasted until Benson, or I Spy, when Bill Cosby in the 60s became the first black person allowed to be on a white TV show. And that's the cover up, is that we all want to beat our chest and say, I've never owned a slave. Nothing in this country has to do with that anymore. When that's how we made our money, was by exploited labor, because it helped our corporations make money. Am I wrong?
I don't think you're wrong. Yeah, generalizing stuff, it may be a little more, I'm not going to say sophisticated, but at least a little more complicated.
Right.
Because even we, us, share, that similar comfort, pigeonholing one another, with like-mindedness. It's just, what is your anchor actually attached to?
Right. And
Is
I'm
the
going to be that
difference of the
guy.
tethering.
I'm going to be that guy that when it comes to
If
dogmatism and like even election, I'm not going to leave it open for the vagaries of like, well, yeah, election, we've all got to bow. I know we all got to bow the knee and confess Christ, but we are called, elect, predestined, adopted, case closed. We can't earn heaven. He adopted, called, chose, and made us co-heirs. It's going to be great. But the other people can mince words. That's not me.
But when it comes to attaching your lanyard to something that, you need to trust it, and sharing anchorage points, it better be with the word of God.
Right. So does this guy get to the word of God? He doesn't even try.
Right. And think about where in our current information environment you see that. It's all over the place. All over the place. And this is how they try to engineer consent. Now, you've probably seen or heard that assessment. I don't know where it comes from. That propaganda works on a third of the people. They just buy, hook, line, and sinker. They buy it. But a third of the people, another third of the people, I should say, they don't necessarily buy it, but they go along to get along. Right? It's just, you see a lot of that in academia. Oh my God. But there's another third of the people, maybe less than a third, who don't buy it and don't go along with it. Right? And who knows why that is. And I would put myself in that last category. Because I've always.
Now, in my situation, RJ, when I was at Christian Liberty Academy and was working at the school, the largest Christian homeschool supplier in the world, I knew for years I had to get out. I had 4 children. I didn't see anybody else hiring me for over 50 grand, in the mid 90s, So I stayed there and worked until they got old enough to where I could say, you know what? This is fake. I'm leaving. I'm going to another church. And that was very hard. But sometimes you got to do it. Anything you want to add before I hit play? We're going to hear the last couple of minutes of this. I think he
Well,
sums
yeah,
it up.
everybody wherever they are in their lifeline, whatever. I certainly can understand periods of time being maybe in an uncomfortable scenario, and then trying to get to the next door, and hopefully it's not a total revolving door, but you know opportunities, uh, and then being able to recognize and for the better, not just jumping from the frying pan directly into the fire. And
Right.
then with um,
We all have to come to our
family.
own conclusions in our own timing about these major life-changing decisions of, should I stay in the city? Should I go buy a goat in the woods, or should I just move to the suburbs and open up a gas station? Who knows?
I think it's worth mentioning. And Matthias de Smet, let's see, Dutch or is he Belgian? I can't remember. But his argument is that the part of the way propaganda works is that first you have to create an environment of what he calls free-floating anxiety, right? So when people are afraid,
wow, that's just evil. Develop free-floating anxiety.
You hit them with a message over and over again, and they get the message, and they conform. And of course, again, like I said earlier, not everybody,
RJ, I got a serious question for you, man. Now, what happens when we have come to this world where the majority of the people in the United States are under constant anxiety that other politicians might take away their right to murder their child and they'd have to have a baby? They're constantly worried about, I've got to vote for this person because otherwise they'll change abortion laws. What kind of effing world do we live in?
Well, that's just it. With the level of such indoctrination and no empathy for fellow humanity, even your own uh, offspring. Uh, I'm not going to be the one to speculate, but when you have a society, a populace that, again, they're pretty much like-minded in that way, and tethered, directly to the mind of Satan, it's going to be ugly. Uh, if the individual isn't able to, find someone to do such a dastardly deed for them, when you're dead, you might just you're forced to do it yourself. I don't know.
Let's just, I'm going to go ahead and say it. I believe that the people that RJ's talking about are influenced and do these evil things because there's even more evil people behind them, cooking and eating children, sucking their adrenochrome, and all of that's true. That's what I believe. You don't have to believe it. Nobody has to believe it. But that's what I believe.
And it's nothing new. It's just escalating. Now, I think.
Your comments, give this guy 4 minutes of the new.
The idea of God's love, right? That if you're in a state of sin, God's love feels like fire that burns you, hurts, right? Feels a rage. But if you're in a state of grace, it feels like warmth or light. God hasn't changed. It's your disposition that allows you to perceive it in one way or another. And I think that's a really true principle. And that's why in my own philosophical work, as a sociologist, I draw heavily on phenomenology. And if you don't know what phenomenology is, it goes back to Goethe probably even earlier, but it's about attending.
You know him as Gauthier. It's Gauthier.
To the phenomenon themselves. So, in Goethe's great example, you don't cut open a flower or a plant to see what it is. The first gesture is to behold it, to perceive it, and let the flower or plant tell you what it is without your judging it. And this is an important part in phenomenology, which it's called the epoche. We can also call it bracketing, where you try as much as possible to set aside all your assumptions or all you think you know about this phenomena. And it could be, for me, it happened. My approach to literary criticism was actually phenomenological, to not reading literature through a lens, like say through a feminist or a post-colonial or Marxist lens, but just actually to read it and see what it says. Which it shouldn't be such a radical proposition, but it is. And that approach, and I think Goethe took that approach in science, and he did it because he was a poet first, that you really learn how to perceive by doing this. So this is one of the things. So this is one thing that's been on my mind, and I don't know where to find this book. Here it is. So I'll read you another quote. One of my favorite philosophers ever. His name is Nikolai Berdyaev. He was a Russian philosopher. Died in 1946 or 48, I think. He was in exile in Paris after the philosopher's ship left Russia with all the dissidents, and he ended up in Paris. But he was a very perceptive thinker and almost prophetic in many different ways. And this is something he wrote long ago in his book, Fate of Man in the Modern World. And I end my book, Transfiguration, with this quote. Here's what he said in the 1930s or early 40s. The world is living in a period of agony which greatly resembles that of the end of antiquity. But the present situation is more hopeless, since at the close of antiquity, Christianity entered the world as a new young force, while now Christianity, in its human age, is old and burdened with a long history in which Christians have often sinned and betrayed their ideal. And we shall see that the judgment upon history is also a judgment upon Christianity in history. Right? That's a hard saying, as they say. Now,
yeah, it is.
I mean,
it seems judgment always starts at the house of God, RJ.
Well, harsh reality as far as again recognizing what you're seeing, and I've said this a number of times, how I feel about organized Christianity today and the level of corruption in the temple when Emmanuel visited it.
Terrorized it.
Well, he made a mess, I guess, a couple of times when spilling, tipping, whipping, creating a whip or whatever, and using it.
We've been encouraged to beat our whip of cords into plowshares or our swords into plowshares. That seems like the Lord Jesus Christ, our Messiah's dissuasion weapon of choice was watch out, I'll hit you with this band of cords or something.
Well, and they would do the same to him, with the cat of nine tails.
Oh yeah, that was even.
But yeah, it's in order to recognize the truth in anything, it could be a challenge.
It's like looking in a mirror.
Also, how, like one of the prophecies of Fatima, or the third prophecy of Fatima, I think it's the third, is that the last battle between God and Satan would be over the family. And we see this over the children, right? And strange, I mean, I think in Michigan, right? Other places as well, where children as young as 11 or 12 are getting medical procedures or advice at school, and doctors are not allowed to discuss this with parents. So a kid might be convinced he's trans and starts getting treatment, and the doctor can't talk to the parents about it at 12. Nevertheless, we also know if a 12-year-old or a 14-year-old shoots up a school, his parents can go to jail for it, right? So we live in a really bizarre time in that way.
I guess. I mean, that does seem kind of bizarre, RJ.
Yeah, I'd probably use a different term like evil, but yeah, bizarre may encompass.
Right. See, because that's shocking now. It's not shocking anymore that a woman goes and has an abortion.
No.
That's not.
Late term. Well, anytime, but yeah, up to the moment of birth and even after birth, whatever.
After birth, late birth, partial birth, they call it euphemistically.
That's what we're all sent here to do. We all have a mission, right? We have to remember who we are, and we have to know what reality is in order to realize that mission. And I think we're at that point right now. And I think Berdyaev, who I mentioned earlier, he saw it coming. He saw it coming almost 100 years ago, 80 or 90 years ago. I think David Bentley Hart, to a degree, saw it coming. I don't know if he totally gets it, but it's a pretty good book, whatever case. But we're at this moment where we're the archons, right? The spiritual world rulers in high places are really battling us, and this is what St. Paul say to do as a result. Right? Here's how he follows up. He says, "Therefore, take up the whole armor of God, so that you may be able to withstand on that evil day, and having done everything, to stand firm. Stand therefore, and fasten the belt of truth around your waist, and put on the breastplate of righteousness. As shoes for your feet, put on whatever will make you ready to proclaim the gospel of peace. With all of these, take the shield of faith, with which you will be able to quench all the flaming arrows of the evil one. Take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God. Pray in the Spirit at all times, in every prayer and supplication. To that end, keep alert always."
Always is a long time, RJ. I mean, really? Stay awake always?
Yeah. It excludes what? Or when? It excludes when?
RJ, what was going on here, man?
So this is
just a minute.
This
I'm
is
show you
this is what's
okay?
called a Pandora's box.
It's called Pandora's box.
Literally.
You know what I'm showing?
Well,
right?
that's that radioactive stuff. I recognize.
A worker
the
at a
scene. You're not
fracture-based
sharing it.
facility.
Yep.
A company called
RJ
Austin
sent me
Master
this, you
Services.
guys.
The company accused of storing illegal amounts of radioactive and fracking waste in Martins Ferry.
If you're looking at like the background earth level in this area, we're about 50 counts per minute.
That's just the boots they worked in. Now I know MAGA people and I used to hate if anybody ever spoke bad about fracking. We needed it so bad. Turns out we didn't. I mean, they're all just like 45,000 capped fracking wells in our state alone that the concrete's rotting on. It's only made to last 40 years. We don't know when they're going to use it, but it's probably going to end up being a fake plasma event. Here you go. That's just me being negative.
Bev Reed here is holding the Ludlam
First Street in front of Austin Master Services in Martins Ferry.
How could you permit the facility in a flood zone that has toxic waste and radioactive tailings from this industry? How could you let them within 1,000 feet of your water source? It's just all craziness.
How do we get here?
That's a good question. My personal opinion would be greed.
This is the story of how a company put the health of millions in jeopardy.
I'm not willing to trade health for jobs. I'm not going to do that to my people.
How the fracking industry laid waste to working class communities.
Every day.
Now, if I would have made this video, fracking is killing America, it would have been clickbait. I would have got a lot more hits because people would have came on to go, you're so stupid. You're a liberal, Gnostic Christian, and you're stupid.
Why didn't he just call it fascism?
I don't know. Boy, that's a nice town, too. That could be such a nice town. This is like...
Was.
This is like, yeah. Yeah, this is... my sister had one of the corner houses that was... a Sears catalog house, and it was like colonial. It was nice,
funny.
Man.
Yeah.
In little communities
All
in
those
the
little
Ohio
towns
River
have
Valley,
one corner.
this is what it looks like. And it's people begging for enforcement.
And how one town fought back.
The Ohio Attorney General Yost has...
They fought back, RJ, but their town's dead. I know that this was big to me because he's wearing the IBW thing. And my father was in the IBW and retired in the IBW. And so, you know what, IBW, they always
and
think
the corporation's going bankrupt, so you're not going to get blood out of the turnip. Oh, man.
Man, that's the spoiler
And
alert.
nobody serves time. No one gets prosecuted for it.
Right, and eventually this reservoir that's being held in by this Tennessee Valley Dam is going to break, and it's all going to be like, how did this happen? I don't know how the Johnstown flood happened. Another company needed the business.
Rural communities, business folks, politicians, they were all eager to welcome the economic revival promised by fracking. Even Mayor Davies got caught up in it.
Everybody's excited. Everybody's applying for these jobs. They're not weighing the risk. And I did the same thing. I took one of them jobs.
What job did you take?
I actually drove one of mine trucks.
You drove a brine truck?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Fracking produces massive amounts of waste. Hazardous, toxic waste. Some of it radioactive that someone has to deal with. That's where Austin Master Services comes in.
You're getting radioactive material. You're getting just stuff that's been underground for a long time, right?
Mike Sabita used to work for Austin Master Services here in Martins Ferry. What's it like?
It smells like sewage.
Okay.
Yeah, it smells like you're going into, a processing plant for human waste.
Austin Master Services opened.
How come everybody looks like me?
Very expensive. So if you're able to take in all that money by accepting all this waste and not have to put any out, you're going to get rich really quick.
We are on our way to talk with a lead activist of a group called Concerned Ohio.
My question is, if they're getting so rich so fast, how did it go bankrupt? Did they follow the money? And
these guys took it.
It's an interesting story.
You're being so cryptic.
From environmental.
And again, I use that word on purpose, and I'll show you why in some minutes.
Accountability to the degree that
she looks
they
like a movie star.
And so what ODNR was doing, the head of the Division of Oil and Gas Resources Management would issue these things called chief's orders on kind of an ad hoc basis, saying that these facilities could operate. And that's how Austin Masters came to be. ODNR just granted them authority to operate because they didn't have regulations in place. There was nothing really for...
No regulations in place. That'd be a great way to have... Oh, wait. Well, if you're a nice person...
It isn't like there's no regulations. There's no enforcement of any
It's like the speed limit doesn't count for other cops. When cops get pulled over, they get let go. It seems like almost every time. Crazy.
For them to kind of check the facility against.
And the toothless agency can only point out problems. They can't even issue fines without getting the Attorney General involved. Years of inspection reports show a pattern of carelessness.
So this is not a good way for me.
Again, this didn't happen overnight either.
No.
You know.
Out of jail. But when it came time to actually fork up the money for the cleanup, they basically said, we can't. Conveniently, they claimed that the company had no remaining assets and that Austin Master Services was effectively a dead company and that bankruptcy was coming soon.
So they leave and they say, well, we run out of money. We can't afford to clean up. We took our 10 or 20 million.
So that's pretty negative. That's pretty much like, okay, I feel like my job is done here. I've been negative enough today.
It's not the first story with that same storyline.
You know, there is, I just have to tell you, RJ, I'm not happy with a couple of things going on, man.
Yeah, just a couple, huh?
No, I mean, what's going on here? I'll show you. You know, I keep getting these different things from people, and I want to share.
I'm not kidding. That other guy, that Martin dude,
Michael Martin. Michael Martin,
is a fitting image of my brother-in-law. Glasses, everything, eyes. Yeah, I had to do a double take on that. I should send it to my sister for both reasons, the likeness as well as the message. You know, and
I want to encourage people to go by Off Grid John. He's put out a couple of real strong, you know, videos that, and I want to see if I can find this one. I've been getting this advice again from people in the comments that, you know, I preach wrong. I don't do it right, you know, and my cryptic remarks don't help, you know, and this and that. And of course,
please everyone all the time. Good luck.
My attitude was to write this girl back and go like, I don't even know you, you know. What do you mean if I want to preach, I should listen to you and do it this way? I don't even know who she is. I'm in the mode of trust nobody. And to me, it's like the Bible. I'm going to preach what I want to preach. I understand we need somebody like Apollo in, what is that? 2 Corinthians.
Well, maybe she's not used to your message.
Maybe she should just take the message and present it properly. I think I even hinted at something like that. You know, Paul was just, it wasn't really, the draw to Paul was like, boy, that guy's a great preacher. You know, other people accuse of Paul of boasting and things of that. And Paul was just going like, hey, look, when you write the theology, when God gives it the theology to you that people on every continent are going with, Satan's little season, Armageddon was past, the star forts were always there. That's always going to lead back to do, re, mi. There's a million people that can present it better. I can't because I'm busy with the fact of dealing with God to see what else the veil is lifting. And if people don't like that, and you know, they wish my number one helper wasn't 150 years old. That's the problem.
Well, yeah, when Saul, who became Paul, I feel has a definite style, and you can usually recognize any epistles that he penned or dictated, you know.
How come you don't get mad when I call you over 100 years old? You're older.
It's the selective hearing, you know.
Well, anyway.
I felt, I knew what you were implying.
Yeah, because you're old. You're old. You'll always be older than me.
Probably.
Yep. We got to make it though to 2046 because that's the time. And that's what, off-grid John was talking about, that we got to get on board. And he said that recently I mentioned 1711 and go on. It's like, look, people, this is all figured out. We've got the systematic theology from the beginning to the end, and it all fits. It hasn't changed while everything else is spinning around you and your itching ears. Go ahead.
Well, as far as being a necessity to, make it to 46, no, it's not like that's a requirement.
Right.
If it's God's will, I mean, that's certainly,
that should be the goal. Blessed are those who make the last 45.
Yeah, but I don't make
still
it,
be saved. You could still be like those in the first resurrection. Some made it until Jesus came back, but a lot of them were martyred.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, a lot of us aren't going to make it. But the idea is to die in faith. How do you know you're saved forever? You die in faith. Or you're alive when he comes back to rescue you, practicing your faith.
Yeah. That would be ideal. But the Lord will be done, however it pans out for us individually.
Oh, I still feel so sorry for those people in Asheville, North Carolina, and that surrounding area in Cuba. I feel sorry for the people in Cuba. They haven't had power for a week.
Yeah, it would be devastating.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, this campus would go crazy. It goes crazy if it goes out for 40 minutes.
Right. Yeah.
Any final words, brother? We're going to wrap it up.
Well, other than that you didn't get into that second clip where that guy explains about the reading.
Oh. Well, I got time. Yeah, because we've still got a few minutes. What one was it?
That was his most recent one. It was the light. The name of it.
Oh.
And then
I was looking at that, and
what did I had a timestamp on that, and you might want to start 30 seconds before the.
But that's the one I was showing.
It's great advice, but that's really describes our situation right now. So
I can go and.
What was that timestamp? 550.
I think it was 5:30. No, it was like five like go to 5:20 to like 6:05. I think.
Okay.
You're judging it, and this is an important part in phenomenology, which it's called the epoche. We can also call it bracketing, where you try as much as possible to set aside all your assumptions or all you think you know about this phenomena, and it could be for me it happened. My approach to literary criticism was actually phenomenological, to not reading literature through a lens, like say through a feminist or a post-colonial or Marxist lens, but just actually to read it and see what it says. Which it shouldn't be such a radical proposition, but it is. And that approach, and I think Goethe took that approach in science, and he did it because he was a poet first, that you really learn how to perceive by doing this. So this is one of the things. So this is one thing that's been on my mind, and
so that's good advice, is what I'm saying.
So
I'll hear a little more.
One of my favorite philosophers ever. His name is Nikolai Berdyaev. He was a Russian philosopher. Died in 1948, I think.
You had just
he was an
it when you were
after
flipping around. So we just watched it, but
I want to hear it one more time.
But you missed that part of his whole explanation of reading text, you know, and
Yeah.
it's paramount to understanding what is being conveyed, you know.
I wish I could have found it. Let's see what he says here.
Take the shield of faith.
Okay, that's where we,
Yeah.
you know, and our faith is what? It is a gift. And the Lord has so many parables where he leaves someone in charge of something important. And I want everybody to look at that as their own body, their temple. Now, RJ and I, you know, we talk about health a lot. And we're not giving medical advice, but we should be allowed to. It's our temple that we care about. This ministry is moving towards structured water and health, and the fact that you are a temple and you're supposed to live like it. We understand that back in the day, if you didn't go to the bath and sweat, because that's how you get rid of heavy metal toxins, you weren't allowed to vote because you didn't care enough about your cognitive abilities to do the obvious, and that you should sweat, stretch, and eat organic. That's why those statues looked like they were in shape. Not that they were gods, but because they understood everybody in history has believed in God except this generation that's been programmed by these bad guys we've been talking about, RJ.
Which you didn't show that short clip on them drone blades.
No.
Saving that. So
Forgot about it. I was up. I did only got 850 words wrote last night. I had to wake up at 4 o'clock to finish that paper.
But that's not even a 2-minute. That's a short. But,
well, they're going to have to wait because I am.
Okay.
I am wrapping it up. Anything you want to close with?
Just stay safe and informed. I don't know. Is that enough?
Amen. That's good advice. So, reminder, it's a flat earth nation. The golden age is past because the mud flood was Armageddon. Me and my friends never going to tell you anything else. Why would we? We're trying to prove that we're 1 called, 2 chosen, 3 faithful, and have your best interest at heart. Amen. Hallelujah. Aho. Aloha. Arriba. Dirty Ciao. Sayonara. Aveda Sane. Nakame.